Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Before we start with our today's analysis, we have an announcement. BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS is happy to announce the launch of a new series on our YouTube channel called The Big News. These videos will be uploaded every single day on our YouTube channel, which will provide a crisp analysis of big breaking developments. This will be in line with the Civil Services Examination, so please do like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says Overlooking Reasonable Accommodation. Before we understand what this article is all about, let me give you a quick summary of what this issue is all about. There were a group of girls who wanted to attend the school in the state of Karnataka, but the school authorities did not allow them. Why? Because they were wearing hijab and this was against the uniform rules of that particular school. So what do these petitioners do? These girls, they file a case in the Karnataka High Court. They request the Karnataka High Court to issue an order whereby they would be able to wear the hijab and attend the school as well. So this was a question whether they should be wearing the hijab, whether is it an essential practice, whether it is a freedom of expression and privacy. So all these were the arguments put forward by the petitioners and they were requesting the Karnataka High Court to pass a judgment so that they could ultimately attend the school with their hijab. So the Karnataka High Court looks into this very premise and gives the judgment. What was this judgment all about? It said that the wearing of hijab does not constitute an essential religious practice. In line with this, is hijab an aspect of freedom of expression or the right to privacy? If it is considered so, then there can also be reasonable restrictions. These reasonable restrictions can be with the imposition of the uniform, since there has to be a uniform according to the Karnataka High Court, even if it is the freedom of expression, even if it is got to do with right to privacy. These two fundamentals have a reasonable restriction, and that reasonable restriction is that there has to be uniformity in uniform, so you cannot wear the hijab, says the Karnataka High Court. The third is that the government order, which was also challenged under this particular petition, is neutral and is non-sectarian, which means it is not only with respect to one particular religion, but it is uniformly applied to every religion. So it is not targeting a particular religion, but instead it is uniformly applied to every single religion. So it does not violate the equality principles, says the Karnataka High Court. So what does the Karnataka High Court say? With respect to the hijab issue, it says that students in the educational institutions should only wear the prescribed uniform, and where no code was prescribed, they should wear such attire that would accord with equality and integrity and would not disrupt the public order. So basically, for the question asked before the High Court of Karnataka, the High Court of Karnataka said that hijab is not an essential practice, and for those who want to go to the schools, they have to wear the uniform and they may have to remove the hijab, says the Karnataka High Court. This is where the article brings into a perspective what is called as the reasonable accommodation. One of the principles that was put in front of the Karnataka High Court is the principle of reasonable accommodation. What is this principle of reasonable accommodation? Let us try and understand this. Let's say in a society there is a default setting. There is a default platform that is established for everyone. If there is a deviation from this default principle, and if such deviation is within the constitutional principles, so this can be accommodated, is what is called as reasonable accommodation. So in the present situation, what is the objective? The objective of this entire saga happens to be getting the education. So in this particular case, what is the reasonable accommodation? The reasonable accommodation is that there is a particular religion, it has its own set of practices. These practices will have to be allowed so that it also brings inclusive model as well. So basically, we are granting some of the positive rights. This is preventing the discrimination and is also enabling some of the personal belief also to be practiced. So the principle of reasonable accommodation says that there is a default premise, and any deviation from this default premise within the constitutional principles should be allowed, says the reasonable accommodation. But in this particular case, the High Court looks into this entire issue and the High Court says that reasonable accommodation with respect to the hijab cannot be accommodated because it would deprive the uniform of its uniformity. So the High Court of Karnataka says the object of prescribing uniform will be defeated if there is non-uniformity in the matter of uniform. So it goes on to say if the hijab is allowed in the schools, this will segregate the people. How? There will be one section of the girls with hijab, there will be other section of the people without the hijab. So this will mean that there will be a sense of social separatism, and ultimately it offends the feel of uniformity, which is why the uniformity is prescribed. So in a class premise, everyone are equal. If there are certain section of the people who are wearing hijab and coming, what it will result is called as the social separateness. There was another question asked before the Karnataka High Court. The Karnataka High Court was asked a question that when it comes to the Kendriya Vidyalayas, you have the central government which allows the women, especially the girls wearing the hijab, to wear the hijab and come, for which what the Karnataka High Court said was that we have a federal structure. When it comes to the federal structure, we have the central government which would be able to run its own operations. We also have the state government which would be able to operate on its own. So the same cannot be or may not be prescribed by the states at the state level. At the central government, this is the policy of the central government, but the state governments, because we are federal, we would be able to take independent positions, independent policy decisions, and the states need not have to toe the line of the center. So what is applicable in the Kendriya Vidyalayas, the same need not be applicable at the state level, says the High Court. So this doctrine of reasonable accommodation goes on to say that there is a default premise, there is a default setting in the society. Any deviation from this default premise so that the constitutional values can be upheld, so that the inclusive model can be upheld, such should have been accommodated, says the principle of reasonable accommodation. So basically, what was the end point of this entire issue? The end point was education. So if people wear the hijab, will it disturb the education? No. So this article goes on to say, so the objective of this particular issue was education. If people were provided reasonable accommodation, which means that this particular community should be allowed to wear the hijab, and ultimately education will not be disturbed. So at the end point, we make it an inclusive model within the contours of the constitutional principles, and ultimately the objective of education is achieved, says reasonable accommodation. So what we are trying to explain is what is given in the article, and this is not our personal perspective. So remember, the reasonable accommodation is where you would actually deviate from the established principle to a minimal level so that you are actually complying by the constitutional principle of inclusivity, is what is called as reasonable accommodation. Now this article currently goes on to say that when it comes to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disability, Article 2 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the People with Disability defines reasonable accommodation as necessary and appropriate modification, adjustments not imposing a disappropriate or undue burden were needed in a particular case to ensure persons with disability the enjoyment or exercise on an equal basis with others of all human rights and fundamental freedom. So this is speaking about those sections of the people who are disabled. So if these people are facing the issue of disability, bringing them and providing the means and measures to empower themselves is not against the constitutional principles, says UN Convention on the Rights of the Principle of Disability. Then we also have the International Labour Organization in its recommendation on HIV/AIDS, and the World of Work defines it as any modification or adjustment to a job or to a workplace that is reasonably practicable and enables a person living with HIV or AIDS to have access or to participate or advance in employment. So what are we doing here? We are ensuring that there is reasonable accommodation. In this particular case, the International Labour Organization goes on to say, for those people who are suffering from the HIV/AIDS, these people may not be allowed in multiple institutions and organizations, or they may not be provided employment opportunities. But keeping aside those rigid rules, if we are able to accommodate them, which means workers with disabilities, workers with HIV/AIDS, pregnant workers and those with family responsibilities, workers who hold a particular religion and belief, if we are able to modify the working hours, change the working environment, provide additional support to such people, reduce the work commitments, what we are able to do is bring in an accommodation. Yes, there are some issues here, but at the same time, we are bringing these people into the loop so that they are also provided the employment opportunity. So we have to ensure that there is a rigid system that is in place. So making slight changes to this rigid system is what is called as the principle of reasonable accommodation. If it is not going to disturb the entire default premise, making slight changes so that this does not disturb the ultimate objective is what is called as reasonable accommodation. If it is going to disturb the ultimate objective, in that case it is not called reasonable accommodation, but a slight deviation, a little change, a little modification, so that this becomes inclusive. At the same time, the objective is achieved. Such is what is called as reasonable accommodation. When it comes to India, we have the Rights of the People with Disabilities Act of 2016. It says the Rights of the People with Disabilities Act defines reasonable accommodation as necessary and appropriate modification and adjustments without imposing a disproportionate or undue burden in a particular case, to ensure to persons with disability the enjoyment or exercise of their rights equally with others. So giving them their positive rights and having a positive discrimination so that they also reach their goal is the intention of reasonable accommodation. This article further makes a mention of two landmark judgments. One is in case of Jija Ghosh and other versus the Union of India and others 2016. In this particular case, the Supreme Court of India says equality not only implies preventing discrimination but goes beyond in remedying discrimination against groups suffering systematic discrimination in society. In concrete terms, it means embracing the notion of positive rights, affirmative action and reasonable accommodation. So this is the very premise which goes on to say that we have to be inclusive, and such will have to be within the contours of the constitution. Then we also have another judgment, Vikas Kumar versus UPSC. This was a case in which the court allowed the use of a scribe in the Union Public Service Commission for a candidate with dysgraphia, or what is called as the writer's cramp. What is this case all about? When it comes to the UPSC, we have what is called as the benchmark disability. For this particular person who was attempting to give his mains examination, he did not have the benchmark disability, and the UPSC does not allow this particular person to have a scribe. Who is a scribe? A person who will write for another person. So he goes to the Supreme Court of India. So the Supreme Court of India says, so you cannot always go by the benchmark disability. This particular person is suffering from something, so either you extend the number of hours to write this particular examination or give him a scribe so that he can ultimately fulfill his objective. His objective was to get the employment. So in this particular premise, he has a disability, but he's not meeting to the standards of the benchmark disability. But since he has a disability, ensure that he is provided an option, an alternative, so that he can accomplish his dream, says the Supreme Court of India. So basically, this article in a nutshell goes about speaking that this very premise of reasonable accommodation may not have been considered by the High Court, but going forward, the Supreme Court should consider this reasonable accommodation is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says IPR waiver push. What is this article speaking about? We had this proposal made by India and South Africa. What was this proposal all about? There are a number of vaccines, there are a number of medicines, there are a number of drugs, instruments and equipments which are used for the COVID-19. So what India and South Africa propose in the World Trade Organization is that all these vaccines or the equipments or many other things which are used for the COVID-19, if they are imposed with patent rights, such should be completely eliminated so that the people are able to extract the benefits of the COVID vaccine as well as the drugs. So it basically says that the patent rights which are now enforced on the vaccines should be completely removed, and people should be able to enjoy the fruits of the vaccines, the drugs, as well as other equipments required for minimizing the impact of the COVID-19. So at the WTO's trade related aspects of intellectual property rights, India and South Africa propose that the World Trade Organization do away with certain provisions of the TRIPS agreement for the duration of the pandemic. Initially, when this particular proposal was made, most of the countries which held the patents happened to be United States of America, that is companies from United States of America, and also from countries of European Union. So when this particular proposal was made, most of these countries and their companies were reluctant, and over a period of time what we had was United States of America accepting to this particular proposal. It said, yes, we will go ahead with this particular proposal. We will also provide vaccines to the people across the globe, and at the same time we will remove the patent rights at United States of America and its companies. But European Union was not happy with it. Now we also have European Union, we also have United States of America, and these two countries which made the proposal, India and South Africa, which have arrived at an agreement for the waiver of the patent rights when it comes to the vaccines that are treating the COVID-19. So basically the draft says all patent rights that protect the manufacturing of COVID-19 vaccines will be waived off for about 3 to 5 years, and such will also be applicable for the line patents, which would also stand temporarily waived. What do we mean by line patents? Let's say for example there is one major parent patent. This also have multiple patents surrounding to it, what we also can call as the branches. So these are called as the line patents. So from one single parent patent, there are derivatives of that particular patent which are called as the line patents. Now when it comes to the patent rights waiving, in this particular case all the 4 countries have said it is not only with respect to the parent patent, but it is also with respect to the line patent, where it would stand suspended according to this draft. However, the draft and the proposal will now be put in front of the World Trade Organization, and countries will have to build consensus. In spite of it, there are some issues and concerns with respect to this draft proposal. What are those? One, when we speak about the vaccines, these vaccines were developed when it comes to the initial COVID-19 virus. These viruses have also mutated as well. They have brought about changes to their structure as well. If these vaccines which were originally developed are sent to the global community, it may not work is the first major concern. Added to it, whenever we speak about the vaccines, what would also happen is it is able to only prevent the severity but not the transmission. So the global community will also have to work towards preventing the transmission as well. Added to it, there is a major problem when it comes to the waiver. What is this major problem? As of now, it is only with respect to the vaccines that we will be getting the waiver, and not with respect to the other equipments, not with respect to the other drugs as well. So vaccines will be getting the waiver, but other drugs will not get the waiver according to the draft policy. Further, when it comes to the vaccine manufacturing, there are few trade secrets, there are few ingredients when it comes to the vaccine manufacturing, the chain of steps when it comes to the vaccine manufacturing. This may not be revealed by the original creators, are some of the concerns with respect to the draft policy. Since this is a draft policy and these are the concerns, let's wait and watch if there will be any changes that will be introduced, and will there be consensus built in the World Trade Organization. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, what is the NPPA's role in fixing the drug prices? Let us try and understand what is this article all about. Before we understand what the article is trying to convey, we have to understand some important principles. Let us try and understand what are these principles. We have one of the important acts which is called as the Essential Commodities Act. What is this act all about? This happens to be an act of the Parliament of India that was established to ensure delivery of certain commodities or products, the supply of which, if obstructed due to hoarding or black marketing, would affect the normal life of the people. So this is what is called as Essential Commodities Act. To simplify this process, let's say for example, food is a very important essential commodity. People cannot live without it. Drug or medicines are very important. People cannot live without it. So all those which are very important for the normal living of the people. If it is being regulated by the government of India, it will be put in one of the schedules of the Essential Commodities Act, so that it is regulated is what is called as Essential Commodities Act. So basically, what is the definition of Essential Commodities Act is not given under this particular act, but a commodity specified in the schedule of this act will automatically become essential commodity. So who would be able to add it? Who would be able to delete it? It is the central government. So the act gives the powers to the central government to add or remove a commodity in the schedule after the consultation with the state governments. So remember, according to the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, which implements this particular act, as of now there are about 7 commodities, which includes drugs, fertilizers, whether inorganic or organic or mixed, foodstuffs including edible oil, hank yarn made wholly from cotton, petroleum and petroleum products, raw jute and jute textiles, seeds of food crops, seeds of fruits and vegetables, seeds of cattle, fodder, jute seed as well as cotton seed. These are some of the commodities which are present under the Essential Commodities Act. But why are we discussing this? That is because one of the Essential Commodities Act happens to be the drugs. These are nothing but medicines. So in order to control their price, in order to make sure that such essential commodity is not disturbed by some other section of the people, what we have as essential commodity happens to be the medicines. In order to control the price rise of these drugs, what we have is called as the Drug Prices Control Order. So according to the Essential Commodities Act, drugs are essential for the health of the society, and that is why drugs have been declared as the essential, and accordingly they are put under the Essential Commodities Act. In order to control the prices, what we have is the Drug Prices Control Order. It is an order issued by the Government of India under Section 3 of the Essential Commodities Act of 1955 to regulate the prices of the drug. But who will execute it? Who will implement it? What we need is an institution, and that is what is called as National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. Does this mean that all drugs will come under the regulation of the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority? So all drugs, will it come under the control of the Government of India? Will all drugs be regulated and their prices will be restricted? No. We have something called as the National List of Essential Medicines. What is this National List of Essential Medicines? Let's say, for example, there are some drugs, there are few drugs which are very important, without which you would not be able to conduct your daily affairs, or the health ministry every now and then meets number of health experts. They discuss together which of these medicines will have to be added as the National List of Essential Medicines. So they discuss, they meet every few years, they discuss and add all the medicines that are important in one of the schedule. So such medicines or the drugs which are added in the schedule of the list is what is called as scheduled drugs. So the scheduled drugs are nothing but the National List of Essential Medicines. So medicines which will be discussed by the experts, by the health ministry, they will discuss and ultimately add these drugs in the schedule. Such drugs are what is called as scheduled drugs, and such drugs are the National List of Essential Medicines. So according to DPCO 2013, it contains about 680 scheduled drug formulations, which means the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority would be able to regulate the prices of these drugs and not every single drug. Let's say, for example, if they are not in the schedule, they are called as the non-scheduled drugs, which may not be regulated by the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority in normal circumstances. In extraordinary circumstances, they may regulate it, but in the normal circumstances, they may not regulate these non-scheduled drugs. So what are the functions of the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority? Its mandate is to implement and enforce the provisions of the Drug Prices Control Order in accordance with the powers delegated to it, to deal with the legal matters arising out of the decisions of the NPPA, and to monitor the availability of drugs identify the shortages and to take remedial steps. So what does it do? One, it will ensure that pricing is provided to a particular drug, and if there is shortage, remedial measures will also have to be taken by the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. The NPPA is also mandated to collect, maintain data on production, exports and imports, market share of the individual companies, profitability of the companies for bulk drugs and the formulations, and undertake or sponsor relevant studies in respect of pricing of the drugs or the pharmaceuticals. And as part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority comes under which ministry. Now the most important question is we have to understand what is the meaning of the ceiling price. What will be the price of the drugs which are put up in the scheduled drugs? The ceiling price of a scheduled drug is determined by first working out the simple average of price to retailer in respect of all branded and generic versions of that particular drug formulation having a market share of more than or equal to 1%, and then adding a notional retailer margin of 16% to it. Let me simplify this process for you. Let's say there is a drug which is manufactured by different brand names. Let's say we have a drug A, drug B, drug C and drug D. The market share of drug A is about 3%. Market share of drug B is about 5%. Market share of drug C is about 7%. Market share of D is about 0.2%. Will drug D be considered according to this particular definition? No. Why? Because it is not above 1%. Because it is less than 1%, this would not be considered for the simple average. Now let's say this drug A is costing about 80 rupees. This drug B is costing about 90 rupees. This drug C is costing about 130 rupees. So if we add, it comes up to 300. Now a simple average would be about 100 rupees. So whenever there is a wholesaler, he can maximum sell this particular drug of all these three. Maximum price of this scheduled drug will be 100. So the wholesaler, if he is selling to the retailer, this should have a maximum price of 100 rupees. And when the retailer is selling it to the customer, he should have a margin of 16%, which means the price of this drug can maximum go up to 116 rupees. From the wholesaler side to the retailer side, the price can only go up to 100 according to simple mathematics. And if it is being sold by the retailer to the customer, in that particular case, margin considered, it can only go up to 116. That is what we mean by the ceiling price. So when it comes to ceiling price, it is the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority which will set the ceiling price, taking into picture the different drugs as well as dividing it by the total number of drugs. Now when we look into this article, what is the issue? There are lobby groups that represent domestic pharmaceutical companies who have been engaging with the central government to ask it to extend the 10% annual hike to the scheduled formulations under the price control. When we look at the price control or the scheduled drugs, they are allowed to increase each year by the drug regulator in line with the wholesale price index, and the annual change is controlled and it rarely crosses 5%. But in the present situation, there is a pharmaceutical lobbying group which is asking for increasing the prices of the scheduled drugs to more than 10%. So ideally, in the normal circumstances, it rarely increases beyond 5%, but they are now asking for the increase of 10%, which means if it gets implemented, the cost of some of the essential medicines will be increased and people have to bear it from their pockets. Why is that the prices are increasing? That is because most of the active pharmaceutical ingredients are being imported from China. Added to it, there is problems with respect to the oil as well. There is increase of the oil prices. Added to it, the manufacturing, the input cost of the manufacturing of all these chemicals as well as drugs is also increased as well. All this means that the input cost for the manufacturer is increasing, and because of the oil price increase, because we are importing the APIs from the China, all this has led to increase in the manufacturing cost, which is why these pharmaceutical companies want an increase of prices of the scheduled drugs if it is being accepted by the NPPA, and if it comes into reality, we may have to shell out extra prices for the medicines and the drugs is what is this article all about. So basically the article makes a conclusion saying that if at all this has to be regulated, what we have to do is to ensure that the APIs which we are importing from China has to be done in India. So we have to become Atmanirbhar, and what we have to do is to make sure that the other chemicals that is required for the drugs will also have to be manufactured in India, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, will the war in Ukraine rattle India's banks? Let us try and understand what is this article all about. When it comes to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have discussed in the last couple of sessions that when it comes to this invasion, this is having a global ramifications. One in terms of politics, the other is in terms of economics as well. When we speak about economics, how is it going to hurt India? How is it going to hurt the Indian economy? When it comes to Indian economy, we have been importing sunflower oil into India from Ukraine, but because there is a clash between Ukraine and Russia, we are not able to import the sunflower oil, and as a result the prices of sunflower oil may increase in India. The demand for the sunflower oil may increase, and India have to look for alternatives. So the first major issue which India can face is because of sunflower oil import. Because we are now not able to import it from Ukraine, this might lead to increase in the prices of sunflower oil. Ukraine has also shut 2 neon factories as well, and this is required for the manufacture of the semiconductor technology. And as a result, since there is shutdown of the neon factories, there is suspension of the semiconductor manufacturing. This has meant that there will be global chip shortage. This will indirectly haunt the automobile and other industries supply chain, and this will ultimately mean that all those companies engaged in the automobile industry, they may not be able to produce their cars. They would have taken loans from the banking sector. Since they are not able to produce, they are not able to release them into the market, they may not be able to pay the required amount to the banking systems. Added to it, oil has been on the boil ever since the Russian invaded Ukraine. Higher input costs for the manufacturers and service providers, and overall good imports are growing faster than exports, which also means that the current account deficit may also widen for India. Since most of it is connected to the Russia-Ukraine crisis, this may ultimately impact the banking channels. How will it impact the banking channels? There are people who would have taken loans from the banking channels. They would be expecting that their products would be sold. They would be able to expect the profits from their products. If these products are not sold, they would have taken the investment from the banking channel. The products are not sold. In few cases, the product itself are not made. Ultimately, they may not be able to pay back the loan that they have taken with respect to the banking system in the country. The Financial Stability Report for December 2021, the RBI warned that from a gross non-performing asset ratio of 6.9% in September 2021, commercial banks were likely to see metric rise to about 8.1% and possibly soar to 9.5% under a severe stress situation by September 2022. So with these people who have taken the loans, they not able to pay back the loans, this may result in more non-performing assets and may hit the Indian banking system, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Explain the principle of reasonable accommodation with relevant examples. Next question, will a conditional WTO not to remove intellectual property rights on the use of COVID-19 vaccines help? Critically examine. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review, do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.